Hello, everybody. Just wait one more minute, see if more people join. We have, I believe, about 17 people. So another second. Cindy, how are you doing?
Hi, Andy. Good to see you. I'm doing good. Thank
Good
you.
to see you again. You're amazing. You're everywhere.
And soon, hopefully.
You already know all this stuff.
Oh, but I wanted to, especially because you're teaching it too, and I love the way that you teach, and I wanted to just, do an intensive, I wanted to do an intensive, and then I saw that you were teaching one, so I really wanted to do it again with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, welcome everybody. See new faces there. Who's any of you are in any of my other classes? Yeah? Okay, good. Well, welcome to this pranayama course. Let's just give just one more minute, see if anybody else shows up. I'm guessing not everybody's going to join the live classes. I know some people are on very different time zones, so they won't be able to join the live classes, but there will be, I'm assuming, a recorded version of this class. So if you guys want to go over it again, you just request the link. I guess no one else is going to. So I'm just going to start with the intro. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Andy, Yoga Veda co-founder, and passionate about pranayama. Some of you have already studied with me, as Cindy mentioned, in other courses, including pranayama courses, teacher trainings, and so on. So for those of you that have not, well, welcome. And first I'm going to go over the requirements for this course, yeah? And one of them is cameras. I need you on video. If you're live in the class, I need to be able to see your face. And why is this? Because we are going to be interacting and I will need to see what you're doing while we're practicing. So this is quite important. If it's impossible for you to connect your camera because of your internet speed, then we can still make it work. It can always work, but it's going to be more challenging. So just keep that in mind. I won't be able to give you proper feedback if I'm not seeing you. And just, well, basically because of that, as Cindy pointed out, this is an intensive course. It's a pranayama course. I know many of you are yoga teachers, so you might be very familiar with the techniques we're going to practice in this course. None of the techniques we're practicing are extremely advanced or unknown techniques. One of the reasons why we decided to start this course or to try this course and see how it goes is because of the feedback of the students. And one of the feedbacks, or one of the reasons why even teachers with a lot of knowledge in regards to pranayama want to continue doing this kind of interactions is because they somehow, for some reason, cannot maintain a constant, persistent practice. Yeah, some others feel that, well, maybe in their trainings there was not enough information, and they don't feel confident, even if there was enough information. Pranayama sometimes is a subject that makes people not feel fully confident in jumping in, either practicing it or teaching it, sharing it with others. So that's basically, it's just to help those that might already have an idea of what pranayama is, or very good idea, but cannot kick in. So let's address the why I teach pranayama. I teach pranayama, well, because it's a passion, it's a personal passion. It's something that I didn't have this issue of being shy with pranayama. It was something that it felt natural to me. And so I experimented quite a lot with it, and I was blessed enough to meet people that taught me amazing techniques and to practice with anyhow. So that's why I do it. So cameras, for those of you that still don't have the cameras on, try to put your camera on. And then let's see what else we have here. So question, who is completely new to pranayama here? Raise your hand. Okay, so we have Michelle and Natalie. Okay, when you say completely new, means you have never done a pranayama class, you have never done a course related to pranayama, you might not even know what pranayama means.
I have never done a class.
Okay.
I'm familiar with it only from my own reading, and I do have a pranayama practice personally, but I would like to teach it to others, so that's why I'm here.
Perfect. What about you, Natalie?
I've just from reading books and things like that, watching YouTube videos, that's really all I know. I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm so new to Ayurveda and yoga. So, and I have a really bad sinus infection, so I don't know how that's going to work out for me today.
Okay, so, good you mentioned that. We'll go over that also in a second. So this first class, just so you guys know what to expect. The whole course is going to be practical. So we're going to be actually doing the exercises. But this first class is going to be to review what we're going to do. So we're going to spend a little bit more time talking. There is not going to be a practice per se in this first class. Thursdays, they will. Right now, we're going to talk about what we are going to do. We're going to review the practices themselves. So I will teach you the practices or remind for those of you that already know the practices. And then on Thursday, and from Thursday on, we will, as soon as I open the Zoom, we will go right into the practice. And then at the end of the practice, we will most likely have a few minutes to share the experience, to exchange notes. If you guys have questions, doubts, or anything that comes during the practice, you have a journal too. So that's, if you want to share part of what's coming out in your journaling, that's also the time to do that. But most of the practice, or most of the time we will spend together, will be practicing, okay? Except this class. So if you have questions right now, or some questions show up as I'm speaking, this will be the best time to speak about. So the first thing, there are a lot of not only misconceptions, but myths about pranayama. And it's quite useful that even teachers ourselves get in that section of misunderstandings, misconceptions, and myths. So this is also something I want to address in this course, is not, of course, with this trying to imply that I do have all the truth and all the knowledge in regards to pranayama. That will be simply not truth. But I will share my notes with you. All of the notes that I have accumulated throughout the years of practicing and teaching pranayams, that's what I'm going to do with you. Something I invite you to do, as I invite every student in every class, is check your notes. Check the notes that I'm sharing with you, yeah? Double check. Don't just stick to one concept, to one teaching, to one teacher, to one book. I'm not saying there is anything wrong with that, but with yoga and many of the teachings and practices of yoga, something that happens is that because the goal is not a physical goal, it's not a tangible goal in the sense of something that we can see. It's open to interpretations. Now, the feeling of where I'm reaching or where I want to go, even when it comes to pranayama, what's the goal of pranayama? if you read different books or ask different teachers, you will find out that there are slightly different perceptions and ideas of why we should do or why we do pranayama. So all of these things matter. And the first question you want to ask yourself is, why do I want to do this? Why do I do pranayama? Do I do pranayama to heal the body? So I want to just focus on healing the body. Is there a specific chronic ailment that pranayama might be able to help? Am I doing it to reach samadhi? Am I doing it to, which in this case means my goal is to work on the cessation, the removal of the inhalation and exhalation process. Yeah, this might sound crazy, but this is called kevala kumbhaka, which is an involuntary cessation of the breath. Means this happens often while some experienced meditators are meditating or are in a state of meditation. This natural kevala kumbhaka will arise. Means they stop breathing. And it might happen already to you. It might have already happened to you. Maybe you were very deep into a meditative state, or after a very beneficial pranayama exercise, you notice that there is not the need for breathing. Yeah, so this is called kevala kumbhaka. And this, for many of us, including myself, is the aim of pranayama. Once I reach that state, of course, why is that the aim for some of us? Because when we reach that state where the breath stops in a natural way, that's when we reach higher states of consciousness, even if it's for a brief moment of time. But that doesn't have to be the reason why many people do pranayama. But going back to why there are so many different opinions is because of where I want this practice to take me. So when you see the benefits of a pranayama, sometimes people will state the physical benefits of that pranayama because that's their focus. And other people will focus on the internal aspects, on the subtle aspects of what you are experiencing. And therefore, you're not stating all of the physical benefits. For me personally, as a practitioner and as a teacher, all of the physical benefits are important, but they are also inherent to the practice. Means if you do the practice, even if you're not aware of them, they will happen. They will show up. Yeah. But if my intention is focused on the higher senses, on the higher goals of this practice, meaning on going a little farther down the road, then I'm not removing unconsciously how far this can take me. I hope I'm making sense with this. What I'm saying is, imagine that there is a highway that can take you 1,000 miles from here, but you only realize in your conscious vision that there are only 30 miles. And then you focus on the 30 miles. And once you reach the 30 miles, you said, I made it, I'm here, I'm done, and you stop. Yeah. But when you realize, oh, there is 1,000 miles, there are another 970 miles ahead, then you know that you still have some more road to walk. And this is, it might not be the perfect analogy, but it's just to show you that pranayama can take you as far as self-realization itself, as far as nirvana itself. Yeah. And in the process, yes, you will gain physical health, balance the doshas, and the perfect harmony and balance of body and mind. Yeah, but that's not it. So you can take the approach that you wish. It's not a matter of you have to think the way I think, but just keep your mind open to how much pranayama can give you. Yeah. And of course, if I'm a beginner, by the way, this course was built in a way that no matter if you're in Michelle's situation or Natalie's situation or in Cindy's situation, which very advanced student with plenty of knowledge, we will all get something out of it. And this is why, one of the reasons is because of the exercises we're doing are not advanced exercises. And even some of them have advanced forms that we are not going to practice here. And the second one is practice, because this is the simplest teaching of pranayama that most of us don't realize. And is not the complexity of the technique, is not the compliments that people can give to the technique, is the practice. Is me actually doing it every day, or whenever it is that I'm supposed to do it, twice a day, 3 times a day, depending on the technique. That is what is going to take us to the full mastering of these techniques. And the interesting thing is that when you start with the simple techniques, even if you are not aware that these techniques have more advanced forms, you naturally move towards those more advanced forms. This might sound like, but how? Because your higher self, your internal body of knowledge simply knows that that is there. And once you access or open a door, then you become aware of what is behind that door. I hope that's making sense. Anyhow, so a few recommendations, yeah, to the upcoming classes where we will be practicing. Try to have the time, yeah. So make sure that you're not having to think of other things while you're in the class, yeah. That you have the time before and after. Give yourself at least half an hour before and after the class. So not come into the class rushing, or not have to leave the class rushing. So we're starting in my time zone at 10 in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, half an hour before, I'm already ready. I'm already here. I have already done a few exercises myself to calm myself, to bring myself to the present. This is very important. And then afterwards, do not rush yourself into whatever. I know you all have responsibilities, but try to not rush yourself back into the world. Yeah. So having a safe space, meaning, well, that you know that there is no hazards around, or things that could come up and disturb your practice. This is going to help your concentration, so you are here and now in the practice. It's already challenging to do a practice like this in a studio where we are all together. There is an extra challenge that is inherent to the practice by not being in all of us together in the same room. So we have to try to create the space internally and externally, so we get the most out of the exercise, out of the techniques. It's important to warm up, and we will do a couple of warm-ups before the class. By warm-up, I mean normally in most traditions, yeah, and like I said, different traditions have different ideas. And this, before I talk about the warm-up, I was mentioning it a few minutes ago. Why I recommend you to read different authors is because you're going to see that not only the things they agree on, but also the things that they, we could say, disagree on, yeah? And those things they disagree on are not necessarily contradictory, but are simply different ways of reaching the same goal. So we have to remain open to accept that there are different forms of teaching, and not jump into questioning right away, as if I say something right now, and because you have deep trust in me, you say, oh, but this other teacher said this, therefore he is wrong, or the other way around. Because you just met me and you have not much trust in me, you say, I think you're wrong because this other teacher said this other thing, or this other book said this other thing. This is not an approach that is going to help any student to reach deep understandings and knowledge of different subjects, not only in yoga, but in life. So we have to be open that there might be more than one way to get to a specific point or goal. And especially if you are an advanced student, if you are a teacher, if you're somebody that already have certain knowledge and understanding of pranayama, if you hear me saying something that is opposite or different, yeah, keep your mind open to let's explore it. Yeah, let's explore it and see where it takes us. I'm not inviting you to jump out of a cliff with me. So don't explore that possibility. That when you say, no, Andy, I'm not going there with you. Yeah. But it's very, very normal, especially when it comes to pranayama, that not only the names of the techniques change, even though it's the exact same technique, also the opposite happens, not two different techniques with the same name. It's quite confusing at first. And again, this does not have to be an impediment to explore that path. Of course, if you see, well, this is not safe for me, like I said, if I'm asking you to stand at the edge of a cliff, well, you say, no, this just doesn't sound safe to me, right? So let's talk about safety. The health concerns, if you have heart conditions, yeah. Does anybody in the live lesson right now have heart conditions? Yeah, what kind of heart condition? There's two people raising their hands, Johanna and Natalie. Can you elaborate?
I have supraventricular tachycardia.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
My heart goes too fast sometimes.
Your heart goes too fast sometimes. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say when you're jogging, when you go, do you jog?
Jog? No.
No, you don't. You're not allowed to run?
I'm allowed. I'm just, I limit myself more than I should. Like my doctors have okayed me to do anything and everything, except for like in yoga, certain things, like I can't do too much forward bending. I have to be careful because that's my trigger that sets off my heart to go too fast. So it's just more about being careful with those kind of things. But yeah.
Okay, so your doctor has given you the green light to try things.
Oh yeah,
and
like
just listen to your body.
Exactly. It's more myself who stops myself and blocks myself because I'm always paranoid that I'm going to set it off. But breathing exercises, they don't tend to set me off. Like it actually relaxes my heart rate, so it's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do some techniques that are a little bit invigorating, and all you have to do, and this is the best advice if you're a teacher you can give to any student, is listen to your body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very easy for us to go into the space of telling people what to do, but we're not in their bodies, we're not in their minds. So yes, we can be very sensitive and very sympathetic and connect with people and have a good idea, but that's not the best thing we can do as an advice. The best thing we can do is teach them if they don't know how, or tell them to learn to listen to their bodies and to be aware of what's going on in their minds. Natalie just mentioned a point. I am limiting myself. A lot of what is happening is coming from within me, means from my mind, from my thoughts. So this is also a very important point, yeah? To calm the mind as much as you can before the actual exercise, especially if it's one that it's making you nervous, let's say. Joanna, can you share with us what's your heart condition?
I don't know if it's necessarily a heart condition, but I have high blood pressure.
High blood pressure, okay. Yeah. Yes.
Medicated, and the doctor doesn't have me on any restrictions, so.
Okay, it's the same situation with high blood pressure. We simply have to, as when you're doing asana, every inversions, it could possibly increase this condition. With pranayamas that are of accelerated rhythm, is the same thing. So is, to me, unless you say that my doctor told me not to do it, then you're good to go. And of course, this is why we need to have, especially if we have some conditions, to have a talk with our physician and let them know, hey, I want to do this. And so, but you have already done exercises in Joanna, you are familiar with pranayama, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So this is more of being aware of your body.
Okay.
Being aware of the thoughts, of keeping the mind calm, and being aware of what is happening in the body. And something very important too, there is not necessarily techniques that are good or bad for this or for that. Often is the amount that we're doing, the repetitions, yeah, the length of the techniques, and the intensity. So you will find out with pranayama that more than saying, oh, you cannot do this technique or you should not do this technique, is sometimes that is the case. Sometimes it's the case that some people cannot or should not do it in a specific time. But more often, the case is related to intensity and length. So when one person could be fine doing 10 rounds of 10 repetitions each of whatever it is, some other person will need to do only 3 rounds of 5 repetitions each. Does that make sense? So this is overcoming the black and white form of thinking that we have ingrained in our brains for biological reasons. We need to overcome that and see that yoga nor Ayurveda, for those of you that are studying Ayurveda, it often is black or white, often lives in this gray area, which is not gray from this understanding of confusing. It's just gray because it is adjusted to the individual. So it could be very black and white at some point for the individual. But we will have to first do the job of, which is what the Ayurvedic practitioners, doctors do, of having a very thorough assessment of my individual. So I have as much information to go as much as I can into this black or white area. Yeah. But when it comes to pranayamas, when we are starting especially, yes, you can know your constitution, you can know your current imbalances, but still you will have to, you might know how a specific pranayama might affect your constitution and your current condition, but you still don't know quite exactly how it will affect you in that very moment. Because remember, our mental state, our emotional state, that's internally speaking. Externally speaking, the environment will constantly affect you. So what today worked in a specific way for you, tomorrow or this afternoon could work slightly or greatly different. And why is that? Because environment, internal and external, are constantly changing. So we have to give that, we have to recognize that and not try to put Ayurveda or yoga or pranayama in this case in these 2 boxes and either goes here or go here, because that's the easiest way to understand it, of course. With pranayama, we need to practice it. And once you practice it, you're going to start seeing, as some of you will, if you practice meditation, won't let me lie. When you practice meditation, sometimes the exact same technique of concentration in 5 minutes do wonders, and it's just amazing. And you try it again the next day, and in 5 minutes you just manage to do nothing, and you wonder what happened. It's the same technique. I'm sitting in the same spot, and it's just the same person. What changed? A lot changed. So, or a lot could have changed. Then final relaxation is very important to take a moment after you do pranayama, especially if you're doing pranayama for a long time, and I mean long time, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour straight, doing just one practice after the other. It's good to take a moment after. And these moments will depend on the individual. Sometimes you might need just a couple minutes and you're good to go. And sometimes you might need 10, 15 minutes. So if we don't have the time that you feel that you're needing at the end of a practice, you can stay still. You can just maintain that space If we're in Shavasana, or if we're sitting with the eyes closed at the end of the practice and you feel you're not ready to come out, then you simply stay there until you feel ready to come back. Going back to health issues, if you, I see most of you, besides Trevor, we have ladies in the group, at least in the live. Hey, Catherine. She can't hear me? Anyhow, menstruation, okay? If you're having your period, there I will let you know which exercises you can do, but it goes back to the heart condition situation. If you're feeling pain, if you're feeling discomfort while doing a specific exercise, simply stop it. Yeah, it is during menstruation, it's recommended to just do light and gentle pranayamas. But again, once you are proficient and you have mastered some exercises, you will find out that maybe it's not your case, that you can continue doing pranayamas and it just doesn't affect you. Yeah, but this is something you have to find on your own. The traditional recommendation is for certain exercises, especially those that require the pumping of the stomach, is to avoid them during menstruation or be mindful. So we go back to the same situation. Instead of doing my normal 10 rounds, I might only do a couple of rounds or not do them at all. So because of course this course happens throughout a whole month, you might find yourself in this situation, and if that's the case, then just again be mindful. You don't have to shout it to the world. If there is something going on, simply stop that exercise and you can simply practice one of the other techniques we're going to learn. Instead of the one that is causing discomfort. Does that make sense, ladies? You can nod if you agree. Yeah, okay. And I feel most of you have, I believe most of you have my email, but either way, I'm going to post it right now in the chat room. So you can go ahead and copy it. There it is in the chat for those of you that don't have my email. And you feel free to send me an email if you have questions or doubts in relation to the practice. And okay, was Natalie, you mentioned you have a sinus issue right now, correct? Yes, okay. So if you're having cold or sinus issues or any of these ones, same thing. Because, well, this course is just happening now and you already signed up, take it easy, yeah? Listen to your body. Traditionally, the best thing to do when you're having a cold or a flu or congestions in the respiratory system is to stop pranayams. You can always do very light, very gentle breathing exercises, but as you are having to inhale and exhale, it's not, you're not stopping from breathing. So you can just mindfully breathe. Practice the psychic breath, which we will learn in the course, but not go into the hardcore strong that requires deep inhalations and exhalations. Okay, the best is to simply stop. So Natalie, you simply again listen to your body and see how is some of the exercises might cause headaches, especially if you have a very strong sinus issues. Yeah, so equal as with the menstruation situation, if you're one of those that have very painful menstruations, you're going to find that certain pranayamas can help quite a lot to prevent that. But of course, during the situation, they're not going to help. They might make it worse instead. And the same thing happens with pranayamas. If you're practicing pranayamas when you are healthy, well, you might prevent cold, you might help sinus issues. But while you're having a crisis, they might do the opposite. So we need to keep this in mind. And finally, with recommendations, I want to say there's two people that mentioned, well, I'm reading books or I'm going online and finding videos about pranayamas. Is be very cautious with taking techniques over the counter. Yeah. With this, I'm not saying do not read books, do not try techniques that you learn in books. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be very, very mindful and cautious. Try to double check. And if you're going to try something over the counter, try something that is labeled as beginners. And as you also see that it's labeled for beginners, try to compare notes with other authors, with other teachers. If you don't have access to a teacher in your town, if you don't have access to somebody that you can say, well, you trust, try to just have as much information about the one subject before you attempt it. Try to ask other, if in this case, if you're part of a Yoga Veda students list, you can ask other students if you don't have access to the teachers. Like I said, my email is there, so you can ask anytime. If I know what you're talking about, we will share notes. But especially with some techniques that are labeled as intermediate techniques, medium or advanced techniques, then we want to be cautious, not because it could be life-threatening. Some of them could, but we're talking about really advanced techniques, but because they could just worsen symptoms that you're already having in relation to imbalances that you might be experiencing, and you might not know that is not helping. Yeah, so we need to know often when we're trying things out of the counter is how they are interacting with other things that we're doing in our lives. Yeah. Weather, for instance, if you live in a very dry place and that happens to be cold too, so the temperatures are low and it's very dry, then doing certain breathing exercises through the mouth might actually create a lot of irritation in your throat. And so, well, you might want to change either the intensity or change the environment, regulate the temperature in the room, regulate the humidity in the room, so you're not getting, you actually get the benefits of the exercise. All of these things are really important. And why I say maybe none of you are in these cases that I'm mentioning, but some people will just take an exercise and start doing it and then say, oh, that doesn't work, it made me sick, without taking the time to analyze what actually happened and see if it was just my lack of knowledge, my ignorance, that took me to that place. So often with these exercises, with most of, either it's asana or pranayama or many other techniques in yoga, is not the technique itself that caused imbalances, is the way that the practitioner was approaching the technique and combining it with other techniques. Yeah. And the beauty of this is you don't need to read 1,000 books for this. You just need to develop a steady practice, and internal knowledge will begin to flourish. This is a magical thing. You just instinctively begin to recognize how things are affecting you. I'm not saying with this, don't read, don't worry, just go and practice. No, I believe personally that there should be a fair balance between external knowledge and internal knowledge that is acquired through practice. But practice definitely plays the bigger role in this. Questions so far? No? Perfect. Yes, who is this? Michelle?
I couldn't unmute myself quick enough. One question. So starting next week, should we be in a place where are we to be sitting on a yoga mat, or do we need to be somewhere we're doing something physical as opposed to a very confined space at a desk?
This is a great question, Michelle, and I would like to say is one of these misconceptions, and even I said, no, you need to be in a safe space, but we sometimes need to elaborate on what does it mean a safe space, to be in the right space, and so on, no? So because of, we sometimes think that I need the perfect environment to do something, then, and that becomes a limitation to do that something, no? And in this case, when it comes to asanas, pranayamas, we feel that it have to be this perfect environment that often is not even perfect. The idea of perfect is not coming from the outside, it's coming from the inside. Like, I feel it have to be this way. And therefore, if it's not, then I just block myself and either don't do the practice or don't focus on the practice. So it is important to recognize that, yes, it is useful to have a supportive and nourishing environment. Is not absolutely necessary, yeah? So the truth is, if you're in a public place, in a coffee shop, well, just put your headphones on. And if you don't mind looking weird from the outside, then go for it, yeah? No, you don't need a yoga mat. I'm sitting in a couch right now because I feel more comfortable. I didn't want to sit on my mat. You can be sitting in a chair. But yes, you're going to have a space where you can, at least if you cannot sit cross-legged, where you can sit straight, where your feet are going to be flat in the ground. This is another traditional myth of yoga, and is that if you're not in the perfect position, then it's not going to work. True, there are certain asanas or body postures that are more beneficial or useful for reaching or awakening certain energies within ourselves, but it's not absolutely necessary. Yeah, so because you find, and some of you might already know what I'm talking about, you might have a client that cannot sit cross-legged. And then what are you going to do with that person? You're going to say, oh, you cannot learn pranayama because you cannot sit cross-legged, or you cannot sit in full padmasana. Does that sound like the yoga that we all know? It doesn't, no? So we need to be able to adjust and adapt the teachings and the techniques and the practices so everybody can get something out of them. Yeah, and if that includes, well, you know what, I'm in my office, I cannot sit on the floor, either because of a physical impediment or because an external experiment, then just sit in a chair, yeah? So you're sitting in a chair, keeping your spine straight, putting your feet flat in the ground, and then we start from there. Some exercises can be done standing, yeah? So if there is external noises, we'll try put headphones, yeah, to try to block as much as you can the external noises. Of course, there are limits, no? If the noise is extremely disruptive for me or for the rest of the group, then, well, we might want to consider going somewhere else, yeah? You might not want to sit in, I don't know, Times Square in New York in the middle of, 10,000 people. It might just not work out as, but if that's all you have, well, you know what? I can't say no. So, but again, does that answer the question, Michelle? Yeah. Okay. Anybody have doubts about this? No? Okay, so this, by the way, is not next week, it's next Thursday. So in 2 days from now, we're meeting again for the first live practice. Now, let's review the techniques. Any other questions so far?
Hi, Andy. Hello, everyone. This is Raksha.
Yes. Oh, hello, Rack. Oh, we can't see you.
Yes, I'll get my video fixed by next week. Andy, do you recommend anything with regards to food and an empty stomach before we start the pranayam?
That's an excellent question, Raksha. And yes, actually, I had it in my notes and I did not mention it. Part of the environment as you prepare yourself to the class, I'm not going to say don't have any food because that might not be an option for you. But if it's possible for you to not have any food in the stomach, then go for it. If it's normal, if it feels natural, then go for it. Just do the fasting, be in a fasted state for the class. If that is not possible, then try to not have any solid food an hour prior to the class. Especially if it's a heavy meal, an hour prior to the class, try to not have any solid food. Liquids are fine. You might want to stop at least 15 minutes before, especially if you're drinking big quantities of liquid, stop them half an hour before. You can have a glass of water 15 minutes before, but don't have a smoothie, for example, 15 minutes, 10 minutes before the practice. That might just not be helpful. So avoiding liquids, I would say at least half an hour before, and foods at least an hour before, if not more. If it's a light meal, if you're just having a little bit of fruit, that it's okay. If you're just having a banana, that it's okay, even half an hour before. You're going to notice as you go deeper into more advanced pranayamas, especially those that have to do with the lower section of breathing, yeah, with the more of the, where the diaphragm, the stomach is located, that, and we have two techniques that involve that even sometimes with very light food or liquid, if it's too short, close to your practice, it's going to have an effect. And you might not say, it's bothering me, it's annoying me, no, but it doesn't allow you to go as deep as you could. Yeah, so often with some techniques, empty stomach, and this is if we read the traditional text, it's this empty stomach. Yeah, is the best, and I can tell you is true as a practitioner myself. When I have completely empty stomach, 12 hours since my last meal, is the best performance that I have. Is when my body works the best, is when the techniques work the best. So if you can do the fasting, go for it. If it's not, again, don't worry about it. Just try to eat as early as possible, having at least 1-2 hours before the practice. Thanks for that, Raksha.
Thank you so much, Andy.
And definitely during the practice, no water, no food, no nothing. You might have a glass of water next to you in case sometimes something happens, something goes the wrong way, and you just have a little sip of water to get the throat wet. That is perfectly fine. Sometimes, especially if you're in dry environments like mine, you notice that your throat gets dry really quickly. You can have a tiny sip of water just to get it wet, and that's it. But not chug some, half a cup or a cup of water during the practice. This is going to definitely have an effect in your practice. No showers after the practice. This might be a little inconvenient for some of you. As soon as you're done with the practice, don't go and shower right away. At least wait at least 15 minutes, half an hour if possible, 30 minutes. And these have to do with the more subtle aspects of the practice, with the energies. So you don't want to flush the energies that we worked on during the practice. Yeah. And this, regardless if you believe it or not, you give it a try and you will see that you will notice there is a difference. Even some people, some cases, I'm not saying this happens to every single person, but some people report feeling sick, like getting a cold or feeling sick after taking a shower right away. after a strong pranayama practice. And as strong, I don't mean advanced techniques. Strong, I mean effective. An effective pranayama practice that did what it was supposed to do. Which of course takes me to the next point. We all will experience different things during the practice. And this is going to depend on your level of concentration, on the level of proficiency in applying the techniques. And all we need is just be patient, allow time to do its job, and be persistent. So if you continue doing the practices, even if it's not during this month, which I hope you all feel something throughout the month, if you continue with the practices and doing them in the recommended way, you will start noticing these changes. And even you can do it as an experiment. Me personally, I can share with you that a lot of this, not a lot, but some of the things that people say, well, like, oh, don't take a shower, I will go and do it. Oh, don't do this, I will go and do it. Because I wanted to experience, not because I was stubborn and I didn't believe them. I wanted to actually see how it felt, how much it did affect my practice. So with many of these things, I can tell you it does indeed affect the result, affects your practice, yeah? And this is the best way to approach yoga, not from a challenging point of view, but from I want to experience everything. And as far as I'm safe, I want to do it because I want to say, yes, that is true. And not out of me challenging the practice, but out of me having the experience itself and saying, yes, it is indeed. And I can now, with that in my backpack, say, I can share it with others and say, this is exactly what happened to me. Go ahead. Again, keeping yourself safe all the time. Now the techniques. So you probably already have this information. We're going to be doing, here, hold on a second. Yes. So a gentle warm up, which you don't have because we didn't put that in the sheets. Full yogi breath, Nadi Shodham, which is the alternate nostril breathing, Kapalbhati, psychic breathing, and Bastrika. That will actually be the order in which we're going to do it. We might here and there show some other techniques, but this is what we're going to be working with the whole time. Maybe some of you are not familiar with the term psychic breathing. I'll go there in a minute. You most likely have already done it, so don't concern about that. The first technique, the full yogi breath. This is a technique that is very much overlooked and very much underestimated, as well as many others here. Yeah, these techniques, some of them are very easy. Maybe you have already done them, you are very familiar with, and it's like, well, what's next? Yeah, I already know how to do that. What's next? I invite you to change that mental perspective or idea of pranayamas, some of them being too easy, or some of them being too complex, or some of them not being as important as others. Yeah, every pranayama, it's a gem on its own, and it can do wonderful things for you if you commit to them and practice them often enough. So full yogi breath is one technique that we can do anytime, anywhere. As far as, again, the one condition of not having the stomach full of liquids or full of solid food, we can do full yogi breath anytime. This is something that people often say, oh no, again, like Michelle's comment, I have to be in the perfect spot. I have to be in this place. I have to be in these conditions. Honestly, the only thing to do, particularly full yogi breath, that I need is to not have my stomach full of whatever it is, liquid or solid. Besides that, I can do it anywhere if I don't mind, again, this looking weird or funny in front of other people. Yeah. The full yogi breath, who is not familiar with? Raise your hand. Who have never heard of this? Okay. Okay, Trevor and Michelle. The full yogi breath is the very first technique that is taught in yoga because it teaches us to feel all of the different sections of our breathing mechanism. Yeah, and I'm not going to go into deep explanations that I can go if you have questions later on. But right now, I just wanted to understand that full yogi breath means I am using all of my breathing mechanism, which we could say is like having a full inhalation, with the difference that having a full inhalation in the traditional sense is not really the full yogi breath, because we're not really using all of the space that we have. So what you're looking with the full yogi breath is to use all of the space that you have. Normally, people breathe in the upper section, which is here, where your lungs are. Yeah, this is what's called the shallow breath. So if you're mindlessly breathing, you're going to feel that the air, the oxygen is going here. You don't feel, in most of cases, yeah, people breathing from their belly, like you see kids. Kids, which by nature are more in contact with the natural forms of things, breathe from their belly. No matter what they're doing, they breathe from their belly. Sometimes if they're very excited or scared, you might see how they start breathing from the chest. If you have kids around, take a look at it, or with yourself too, but with kids it's very, very obvious. You don't have to ask them to do it. You see when they're scared, when they're in distress, you see that they're breathing up here. You can physically see their chest going up and down. And see when they're relaxed, when they're playing, when they're doing their thing, see that their little bellies move up and down, out and in. And they don't have to fake it. They don't have to try to do it. It's just how it happens. This upper breathing is related to the sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that makes us being stressed, and so on and so on. So naturally, without us knowing, by constantly breathing here, we are triggering chemicals and hormones and mechanisms that are in our body that keep us in constant fight or flight. Yeah, the fight or flight is this system that is related to the sympathetic nervous system, and that keep us in the attend, alert. There might be some dangers around. So by simply changing that to breathing, beginning the breath, because it's not about never breathing up here, it's about constantly breathing up here. The problem is not breathing here sometimes or using one full yogi breath and including this. The problem is constantly breathing up here. So I want to begin this breath with the lower section, with my stomach. So if I remove this, and I want to start with my stomach, I want my stomach to go out. So your diaphragm, which is sitting right here, which is the one that allows you to breathe, you must learn to control it. So one of these exercises, if you have no idea what your diaphragm is or how it feels, you want to push it out. You want to push your stomach out. To push your stomach out, you have to use your diaphragm muscle. The diaphragm is a muscle, and as a muscle means I have control over it. And by using my diaphragm to push down, is naturally pushing the stomach out of its internal space and out into like what it looks like, the belly, the Buddha belly. Okay, this is the first thing you want to do to understand the full yogi breath, is to start your inhalation, noticing that nothing is happening up here. And you can even do this little thing I'm doing here now, which is putting your thumbs on the sides of your chest and the index fingers in the center of the chest. And when I start breathing through my belly, nothing happens here. If I breathe through my chest, the fingers go apart. And that is telling me I'm breathing up here. So you want to breathe down here. So this is something I want you, especially for those that have no idea of what I'm talking about, to start playing with these things for the next couple of days. So when we come on Tuesday, we're ready to go. Putting your hands here, just breathe once on the chest and see how it expands. And then breathe from the belly and see how nothing happens up here. A full yogi breath is a combination of both. So I'm breathing first down here to feel the lower section of the lungs, and then I continue up here. So I'm guaranteeing that I'm using, if not all, most of my lung capacity. Some people will include the ribs too. This requires a little bit more of control over your body, but you have muscles around your ribs that also allow you to bring your rib cage to the sides. So if you see, by moving your rib cage to the sides, what are you doing? You're giving more space to your lungs to put air inside. And that is the idea. So you begin by playing with your belly. Then if you can feel or control your rib cage, then you expand your rib cage a little bit, and then you end with the upper section of the lungs. This you want it to feel natural. You don't want it to force it. You don't want it to be forced. You don't want it to feel hard or strengthens. You just want it to feel natural. So you're just trying to take a deep inhalation using all of your lung capacity. For that, you need to push the diaphragm down. Belly comes out as the inhalation begins and continues to move up. Yeah, so I'm going to move rather quick here because I took too long in the intro. Then we have the Nadi Shodham, or the alternate nostril breathing. And this one, again, there are many different techniques. We're going to do the basic technique. The basic technique of Nadi Shodham is done with your right hand, and is done using your thumb and using these two fingers. So my hand goes in this position. Some people will do it slightly different. Some people put their hands, some people would say, I'm going to put these fingers here, yeah, in the center of the forehead. If you're already used to do that, then go ahead. Go for it. But traditionally, in most of the traditional texts, when I say traditionally, I mean the original texts of yoga tell us that this is the traditional way of doing it. So the thumb is covering my right nostril, and the other two fingers are covering, especially the ring finger is covering my left nostril, or is going to be used to. So I basically, what I'm doing is just covering one, inhaling through the one that's open, and then covering the one that was open and exhaling through the opposite one. And inhaling through the one that's open and exhaling through the one that was closed. So keeping a perfect balance in inhalation, exhalation. Who is not familiar with this exercise? Everybody have done it. Perfect. Okay, so I don't have to go too much into it. This is the most basic, the most simple, the safest form of Nadi Shodham, yet the most powerful. Why the most powerful? Not because of where it can take you, because some others can allow you to reach Kevala Kumbhaka, yeah, but it's the most powerful because it's the one breath that is going to allow you to reach a point that very few yogis understand need to be reached before yoga starts, and is the balancing of the humors. So when we read the traditional text, we know that before the yogi starts its path, needs to find a balance of the humors. And how the balance of the humors is reached is mostly, at least in the traditional text, through this breathing, through the traditional form of Nadi Shodham. There are different techniques or different ways in which it can be applied, in the sense of, well, some teachers will say, do it for 5 minutes to begin with, and then increase the time. Some would say to do a specific amount of rounds from one side and the other. All of this becomes irrelevant if we're not doing it daily. Yeah, the way I teach it is extending the time, the way Shivananda, Swami Shivananda teaches it, just extending the time little by little. So for you, if you've never done it, maybe a couple of minutes is more than enough. If you have already been doing it, then you know that, well, 5-10 minutes is great. And you want to reach the point where you're in about 30 minutes. That's where they say this breath starts kicking in. Other traditional texts tell us that we do just a few 10 to 20 rounds, and we do it several times a day, including the Hatha Yoga Pradipika says this. We do it in as soon as we wake up, we do it at noon, and we do it again at midnight, which is a little bit not contradictory, but it goes against some other teachings, but there is a reason for that. Because saying, well, having to go to bed at midnight, no. But anyhow, the point is to do it several times a day when you're starting, and you will see results even faster. Yeah. The way we're going to be practicing it, of course, is just a few minutes, and then you can, on your own, do it 2 or 3 more times during the day. Is if you want to balance your humor, means remove all of the imbalances that your doshas are experiencing, this is the one breath you want to take on. Sounds very simple. There is no retention. There is no counting. We can do count. There can be a count involved, but no retention, no kumbhaka. Most of students, at least that I approach, as soon as they learn this one, they want to jump into the retention one, into the different forms of retentions, including external retention. And it is very clear in the text that this is not, the point is not to get there as fast as you can. The point is to use the basic form of this technique to reach the balance of the humors, and then move on with the rest of the pranayams. Then we have Kapalbhati, which is another basic pranayam. This is something that could be useful to you too, just to have next to you, I mean, a paper roll or tissue, something, because it just happens very often, because it's part of the practice, no, that things come out of your nose. So don't be shy in blowing your nose if you have to, like I'm going to do right now. Excuse me. So before we start, who is familiar with Kapalbhati? Who does Kapalbhati regularly? Okay, most of you. Who is not? I'm sorry, just to be clear, is Natalie. We have 1, 2. Okay, two people. Okay, so Kapalbhati, again, another Kapalbhati is actually considered a kriya, as well as is considered a pranayama, meaning a kriya that is a cleansing exercise. It's so powerful that it has both effects. So it's also very useful when starting the practice together with the one that we just explained. Why? Because it allows the humors to balance. Kapalbhati, and you have more information about all of this already in the information that was shared prior to starting the course. Kapalbhati technique can be quite a challenge for some people, especially if you're not aware of your diaphragm, okay? And there is another technique we're going to learn that is slightly different. I'm taking over, this class was supposed to be 1 hour, guys. So if you need to go, just go and just retake on the recorded version of the class if you absolutely have to go, okay? So feel free to do that. The Kapalbhati is done using the one muscle we described at first, the diaphragm, this muscle that allows me to control my lungs, which it works with the parasympathetic nervous system. It just works on its own with part of the autonomous nervous system. It doesn't need us to work, but we can also control it. So we want to work with that muscle to push the lungs, and therefore by pushing or creating pressure in the lungs to get air in a forceful way out of our body. Either if it's through your mouth or through your nose. In this case with Kapalbhati is through the nose. So it looks something like this. You always want to start in an exhalation, not necessarily at the end of the exhalation, but towards the end of the exhalation. And there is a reason for that. I will explain it later. So if you notice, I'm not using my abdominal muscles. You might not be able to notice that. I'm not using my abdominal muscles. The abdominal muscles are being contracted. This is just part of, you cannot avoid that. But your attention is in the diaphragm, in this upward movement that naturally pushes air out of your nose. If you notice, and I think it's hard because we're not in the same room, my exhalation is not happening up here. My exhalation is not coming from this area. My exhalation is coming from here. So I can exhale here. I'm still using the diaphragm. The diaphragm never stops working when I am breathing in or out. But the emphasis is not here. And if you notice, if you try it back home, when you do this from up here, you're going to feel that more liquids or stuff comes out. When I do it from here, stuff is coming from down here, especially if you have ama in the lungs, if you have phlegm, if you have stuff related to sinuses, related to lungs, if you just had a cold, for example. When you start doing this breath, you're going to actually feel the physical phlegm that is stuck in all of this section come out. So if that's the case, you might feel, if there is phlegm inside, you might feel the need to spit it out. Go ahead and spit it out. That is ama, that is toxin. Don't swallow it back. You might not have any of that physical ama in the body, then you're not going to experience this. Simple as that. Again, keep in mind, the effort is coming from down here, not from here. Everything is working, everything is helping, but the effort comes from here. From me bringing awareness to the diaphragm and pushing it up. So the little bit of air that's there comes out. It is important that we are not consciously inhaling. Means I'm not, that's something else. We will learn that one too. It's important that we allow the air to naturally come in as the diaphragm relaxes. So when the diaphragm relaxes, enough air will come in to allow us to go into the next, what I call the pump, into the next pump. So you notice that I am not forcefully bringing air in. I am forcefully pushing it out. And it's naturally by the relaxation of the diaphragm coming inside. Does that make sense for the people that are not familiar with the exercise? Yes? Okay.
So this is something like breath of fire that you see in Kundalini yoga, I'm guessing.
It is similar, yeah. But Kundalini, it's a whole other conversation. Kundalini yoga on its own has its own techniques that if we're talking about the Kundalini yoga of Yogi Bhajan, which is the one that most Westerners are familiar with, those techniques are, most of them are not in the traditional text. I'm not putting any load on them, but most of the let's be more generous and say some of the techniques are not in the traditional text. So whatever, if you learn something from Kundalini Yoga, if you're a Kundalini Yoga teacher yourself, don't take this the wrong way. But you don't have to believe me. A lot of the techniques that are taught in Kundalini Yoga of Yogi Bhajan, we cannot find them in the traditional text. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying there is something bad. No. But so it's hard to sometimes compare, like Natalie is just asking this question. It's hard to compare whether it's the same thing or whether they are related or they're made for the same purpose. So unless you practice both, you can say, oh yeah, that is the exact same thing, Andy. Yeah, but because I don't practice the Kundalini Yoga of Yogi Bhajan, I cannot tell you, yes, it's exactly the same thing. Somebody else had already brought this question, and I've seen the breath, and it seems similar. Yeah, so, but that's all I can say. I hope that helps. Yeah. Then we have the psychic breathing. We will review them again before the first class for those that are very new to this, so don't stress out about that. I want to just finish with this. The psychic breathing. The psychic breathing, I will read something in the next class before we start the class. You might have already been doing it for a long time. You might be very familiar with, is awareness of the breath. Psychic breathing have many different sections or steps. The final step of psychic breathing is to be able to control the breath, which is prana. Yeah. So we're talking about the physical breath in a sense, but we're not talking about the physical breath as a whole. The pranayama goes beyond the physical breath. So you will get to a point when you have mastered the art of pranayama, yeah, which is described as the control of the breath by some teachings, and as the expansion and contraction of the prana, of the living force. Yeah, so that is what pranayama is actually about. It's not about breathing in and out, it's about controlling this force. And once you control this force called prana, you're going to be able to, even without the inhaling and exhaling action, control this force. And that is what psychic breath is. Some of you might have experienced this as when you're doing pranayams, the first place where you feel this is your chest. And you might feel like something is going on in the chest when I've done some pranayamas or when I'm in a deep state of meditation, like something is happening in my chest. It is experienced sometimes as bliss or as an actual force that is around the chest. Well, that is the first place where prana is accumulated. And from there, the first step, of course, is becoming aware of it. The second step is to begin to manipulate it, which means I can move this actual force in the same way that I can touch different parts of my body with my hands. I can move prana, and that's where pranic healing is used. Yeah, so you see the different steps. But the first step, the one we're going to practice here, is to become aware of that. And how do I become aware of that? Well, the very first step is to become aware of my breath. This is the foundations of Buddhist meditations, which is they combine those two, and is to bring awareness to the breath. To use every single tool possible to bring awareness to the process of breathing. Not to control it at first, just to be aware of it. And this is a challenge on its own. If you have never attempted, I invite you to try it in this 2 days break before the next class. Sit down for a moment and just try to breathe consciously, meaning I am aware of the process without controlling the process itself. And you will notice that somehow your consciousness wants to take over the breath and decide how long inhalations and exhalations are going to be. And this is the first challenge of psychic breath, is to let the breath be, which is what the Buddhists do when they tell you to sit down and meditate, is just let the breath be. Just look at it without, it's like having You know, when you find something beautiful in front of you and you want to grab it, it's like, oh, how pretty this is. It's a natural reaction. We don't just look at it. We want to grab it. I'm not saying that's everybody's case, but it's often the case. We want to touch it. If we find something beautiful, we want to touch it. And this is what we do with the breath. As soon as I realize of this amazing thing, I want to control it. But the first step to be able to control prana is not to actually control the breath, is to let the breath be. And once you let it be, then you can tell the difference. It's like this when you do progressive relaxation and they tell you tense the muscles and then relax them. Yeah, have you ever done that? And when you do that, what is happening is you are learning the difference between tense and relax, because often we are not completely aware of it. And as soon as you do that exercise, it's like, oh yeah, I can see now that I was tense. It's exactly the same thing. You want to first learn to let the breath be, but be very mindful of the process. So we will do that and slowly introduce different portions, that different steps, different tools to that basic exercise. And finally, Bastrika. Bastrika, which some of you, I know Cindy have done it with me, have two different forms that are, the one that we're going to learn is, we could say, the one that you see the most in the traditional text. There is another version that we're not going to learn here that you might already know. Maybe you already practice Bastrika, and when I explain Bastrika right now, you're going to say, that's not Bastrika. Remember what I said at the beginning of the class. There are different forms, sometimes the same exercise called the same thing, different things, I'm sorry, or the same exercise explained in different ways. So it's Bastrika. If you're not familiar with Kapalbhati, you might find this a little bit challenging because they are very similar, but at the same time quite different. They require the same muscles. The process is very similar, but we're adding something to Bastrika. Remember in Kapalbhati, I said that you are forcefully exhaling and peacefully or naturally inhaling. Yeah, so is an active exhalation and a passive inhalation. In Bastrika, both the inhalation and the exhalation are active. So it looks something like this. So in Bastrika, another difference, even though as in Bastrika as well as in Kapalbhati, the exhalation is forceful. In Kapalbhati, the exhalation is a tad faster. When in Bastrika is, so you see the difference. So I go back to Bastrika. It's called the bellow breath. It's this thing they used to give to lighten the fire in the fire pits. This machine, that manual thing that it goes. That is what we're trying to replicate. So if you see, there could be there could be an argument of how similar they are, Bastrika and Kapalbhati, but they're actually quite different when you dissect them in the way I just tried and attempted to do. Again, if you've never done this, who have never done this Bastrika before? Raise your hand. 1, 2. Okay, 2 people. Perfect. That's much easier. So you will get it. I guarantee you that you will get it. Just be patient with yourself. Try to remember, go back to this class, maybe tomorrow or later today, find the link. It will be in your dashboard. and whenever it's ready. I need to say, I don't know when the team will have the class ready, but whenever the class is ready, before the next class, try to go again and just see this thing that we just did. I will repeat it again, but for now, that's going to be questions in regards to the techniques that I explained or in regards to the course. So we can, I can let you guys go. Questions or comments, doubts?
I wanted to ask, like my aunt, she just had part of her lung removed, like a little chunk at the bottom. Would these kind of things be a contraindication for her, or would it actually help her with her getting her breathing back on track?
I will have to have more information, Natalie, to...
Sorry, my doorbell rang, so the dogs are barking.
It's okay. To give you a better, if you want to send me an email with more information, and I can ask you more questions, yeah, to see if this is useful. This, to begin with, if this person is not being guided by a teacher, then Bastrika is not recommended. Okay. Bastrika is the only one that we need to be a little bit more careful with out of all of these techniques. But you will hopefully feel confident enough to not only do it on your own, but also teach it after you have practiced it enough with other people. We need to go step by step. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Questions, comments, doubts? No? Perfect. Okay. Guys, first I want to apologize because I took almost 20 something more minutes. We started 10 past 2 of your time, so I apologize for that. Now from the next class on, it will be about an hour class, and as usual, I'm always open to stay a little longer to answer questions and so on and so on, but the class itself will be about an hour. Okay. So if there is no doubts, questions in regards to what we're going to do or start doing next Thursday, I'm gonna let you go. Go ahead, and if you still have, if a doubt or a question shows up between now and next Thursday, go ahead and send me an email, and we'll do the best to help you with those questions and doubts. Otherwise, then I see you on Thursday, ready for practice. Remember, empty stomach, and in a space where you at least can be sitting and not highly distracted. And see you Thursday then. One last time, questions, doubts, comments, no?
Well, it looks like there's a question in the chat room.
Oh, let me see that. TJ, what about my morning asana practice, which does include pranayama? He's with question mark. Do you understand his question? Because I don't understand the question mark. And if you're oh, TJ is here right now. Okay, so if your morning asana practice includes pranayama, I would say just suspend your pranayama practice for now, because I don't know how your pranayama practice is, if it's if it's a strong practice, if it's going to deplete you. It could work the other way. You're more than fine to do 2 sessions of pranayama. I don't know that. So my suggestion will be to not do pranayama before. Just do your asana. Yeah, that would be great. You do your asana, and then we jump into the pranayama. If you're doing your asana much earlier than this class is starting because of your time, son, if you're going to do pranayama, do very gentle pranayamas. You can also test it and go ahead and do your normal practice, and then do the class we're going to do and see how it goes. Yeah, again, if you have more doubts, TJ, I invite you to send me an email, and you can tell me exactly what do you do, what pranayama exercises you put in your daily asana practice, and then I can give you more educated advice. Yeah, and that will do. Thank you very much, guys. Again, thank you for taking the time to come. I'm sorry that I took a little bit more time than expected. And I will see you on Thursday, ready to practice as soon as we start the class. Okay. Well, I said I was going to read something, so after I read that. Thank you very much, and see you next Thursday. Have a great day today, and see you in a couple days. Bye-bye.